first one there is rich picture, right? Rich picture. How does rich picture work? Rich picture is just for you to like visualize the overall business process, right? It's not saying this have to move to this, or you have to do this before this and do that before that, right? It's just like the overall ecosystem of your business. How does it relate, right? So, for example, this education, the sample shown here, right, is education system data flow as is. If you look at what the naming is, education system data flow as is. So what this typically shows is how data flow from the database to the website, to different nodes, different reports, scanner, complaint log. So how those things interact, right? What is at the center of it all? How your key business process interact with one item or the other, right? So in the case of let's go into a simple case. In the case of frying plantain, for example, so what might be in the middle is frying plantain, right? The next layer might be your edible inputs. So you might have things around oil, salt, you might have things around what again? Probably if you decide to use onions. Then you can have the outer layer and have things like your pan, your gas burner or your gas tank and your gas burner, your bowls, your knives, and all of that. And you try to notice the interaction within those items, right? What interact with what, right? At the end of the day. And that is how you do rich picture, right? So the key elements of rich picture is what are the process of transforming input to output, right? How do you move from input to output, from raw plantain to the overall fried plantain, right? What are the inputs? Where did they come from? What are the outputs? Where did they go to? What are the steps in between? That's just general rich picture. You can browse online, Netflix rich picture, right? It's going to bring out something for you, right? If you browse Netflix rich picture, for example. So go online, do as much research as possible. Browse, you would see those items, right? So I'm going to remove this. Now, another model that you often see, or that you would see at some point as a business analyst, is this swim lane, right? Okay, so I'm going to take flowchart swim lanes together, right? So that we understand it in this get-go. So some of us already understand what flowchart is, right? Your flowchart is like the sequence of steps you have to do in an activity. So let's assume I'm going from the mainland. Oh, an error. From the mainland to the island, for those of us that are familiar with Lagos, or let's say, and let me use much more easy factor. Okay, I'm going from Lagos to Abuja, right? I think everyone is familiar with that. Lagos to Abuja, right? So probably I would have to start, let's say our starting point would be from Lagos mainland, right? So I'm going to decide, should I take a bus or should I take probably Uber, right? Uber or bus, I'm going to decide there. So that decision, Uber, I'm going to take Uber or I'm going to take bus. So at the end of the day, either Uber or bus, I'm going to get to the airport, right? So once I get to the airport, I'm going to board a plane. I'm just flowing it, right? Each of those tasks, Uber, bus, board plane, right? Once I get on the plane and I exhaust the entire hours on the plane, I get to where I land, I highlight from the plane, then I'm going to probably decide whether to take a cab or a taxi to my location also. So this is called process flow. In the case of our plantain, right, Do I want to have diced plantain, for example? I might start with a decision also. This kite shape is like a decision. Apologies that I can't draw straight with. So it's usually a kite shape, decision gateway, right? So do I want to have diced plantain, or should I call it sliced plantain? Diced or sliced, right? Diced or sliced. So if I say diced or sliced, at the end of the day, I'm going to put it in my fry pan, start frying. Once it's ready, I take it out of the fry pan, put it in a bowl, and serve it, and I end the overall process. So that's flow charting, right? Flow charting. So I've done a simple flow chart, right? Is a chart that shows the flow end to end of that process. Now, if we come to in terms of swim lane is going to help you to divide this flow chart into, remember those actors, right, on your flow. If I can go back, let me just who performs each activity? This number 6. Who perform each activity? Your swim lane is going to help you to understand who perform each of those activities. So that's the difference between a flow chart and something that is done in swim lane, right? So swim lanes are usually called cross-functional flow charts, in that you have different functions, right, or different members performing the work. So look at this diagram down here. You have staff member A, right? And we also have staff member B. I need to minimize this. Can we just leave my screen? Zoom, you're interfering. All right. So you have staff member A and staff member B in different swim lanes. What swim lane mean is this. Let me just try to also illustrate that so that we understand what swim lane is. Some of us are hearing the term for the first time, right? So I'm going to depict what swim lane is quickly. So in cross-functional flowchart, or BPMN, some people call it BPMN, M and N. BPMN means, you can research that, business process modeling notation. So it's like a simple notation in a way we model our business process, right? So in BPMN, we have something that we called a pool. Imagine your swimming pool, right? So that's what it's called, a pool. That's what they derive their idea from, right? If you have a single flow, it's going to be in a pool. So the flow chart I just drew just now, that there was no staff member A or staff member B and all of that, right? That would be called a single pool. So I can draw all of that in here, right? All that process flow in here in one swimming pool, right? Now, if we have different participants in that process, for example, we are going to have customer and admin, right, in our loan application process. I'm going to divide this pool into two. And once you start dividing a pool into pools, remember your Olympic, then you have lanes, different swim lane, right? Lane for Colombia to swim, lane for Nigeria to swim, lane for USA to swim. That's what swim lane is, right? So we have divided the pool into different lanes. So this first part might be the customer, right? Customer is going to operate on this lane. Then the admin in our loan process flow is going to operate on the second lane, right? So any activity that the customer does, remember we are flowing the sequence of activities, right, in process design. Any activity that the customer does is going to stay on this swim lane. So customer come into our application, then customer request for a loan, then customer is going to what? Submit the loan, right? Request. Once they submit the loan request, it's going to go to the admin swim lane. Admin receive the loan request. Admin review the loan request and determine whether it's eligible or not. So that determination of whether someone is eligible or not we call it decision. Remember that kite I drew that time, right? That kite shape. So decision gateway. Is customer eligible? Yes. Approve the loan. Admin will approve and disburse the loan to the customer. So at the end of the day, customer gets the loan, right? So everything customer gets or customer does is on customer swim lane. Everything admin does or gets is on admin swim lane, right? That's the idea of swim lane, right? It's a swimming pool that we've divided it into different lanes based on your activity. So your activity is going to fall within your swim lane alone, right? So in this decision gateway, if customer is not eligible, yes, you decline the loan request and notify the customer, and then the overall process ends, right? So the overall process ends. So that's swim lane. I'm still trying to get this Zoom controller out of the way here. I don't know why it's there. It has been distracting me. Okay, I think I have it now. All right, so that's the idea of swim lanes. And what we have here is staff member A, staff member B, right, on the slide. Activities. So they show all the activities and decision gateway, staff member B, whether it's going to flow to, from this step 3, right, whether decision gateway is that kite shape, right, whether you move to your process 4 in staff member B, or you move to process 5, next activity, would be dependent on this gateway, right? So there are different kind of gateway, different type, and those ones probably would have a whole class on its own to go into BPMN, right? For you to understand business process modeling notation. But you can research it online. You can check YouTube videos to understand how to properly draw a business process model, right? So these things are all models, and that is the idea of swim lane. Now, why do we have do this kind of detailed sequencing? I mentioned it earlier, so that we'll quickly be able to what? Assess and trace that particular process, right? And interconnections between them. So it's right here on the screen, right? We want to easily plot and trace the process, know the interconnection between admin and customer, right? The different departments, the different teams. And at the end of the day, we'll be able to identify inefficiency and handover points, right? Where the task handover from submission of request and it goes to admin, right? We'll identify it where those things are inefficient. So having admin to review, approve, why don't we automate that particular part, right? Why do we need admin to approve, review, and all of that? We can just automate it. So you can start identifying or spotting those process gap or inefficiency. Where is causing delay in this our overall process? Why do we have to wait for this? Why do we have to wait for that? So if you have a very complex process, you can easily identify from that process where the gap is, right? Where the issue are, right? And that is the essence of you drawing or doing process design or drawing your process mapping, right? So I'm going to clean all of this so it doesn't follow us to the next screen. Yeah. So is it pretty straightforward? Are we good?
Yeah.
So now that we already understand how to map process, like I mentioned, why are we mapping the process? The process mapping will help us to know whether we need to improve that particular process, right? Or we have to redesign it. To get to that to-be state, it would, if we map that current state, right, draw it out, we'll know whether, oh, let's just improve it, let's just tweak some part of it, or no, this flow can't work. We just have to redesign the entire process. And that is one of the essence of process mapping. So what is process improvement and what is process reengineering? Process improvement assumes that some parts we can just change it, tweak it, and increase the efficiency, right? Automate some part of it, remove some handover steps, probably in your leave request. There's a supervisor that just look at it and pass it on to the head of department. It doesn't act
It's red pen.
right? So that particular supervisor, we are going to cut that person out of the entire process, right? We'll optimize the process and ensure that we will take what we have and make it better, right? What we currently have, we'll take it and make it better, right? We can review that overall swim lane or process that we've drawn, right? And would focus bottom up, all departments that are included in it, and we'll try to increase the efficiency, right? That is less risky. That's the easiest way people approach solving for their issue, right? We'll take what we have, make it better, just tweak some things there, remove redundancy, remove bottlenecks. Redundancy are those steps that are really not needed. It's not adding value to the overall process. Someone is just moving documents from one table to the another. Why can't we cut that person off? Why don't we send the email directly to the person that needs it, right? So all those things, we are going to review it and improve those processes. Now, re-engineering is that what we currently have, we can't even tweak it to where we desire ourselves to be, right? We can't start modifying this paper form for our loan request and trying to tweak it to meet up with what we have online, right? Because of that, yes, we might still leverage on what we currently have on the existing form, but we can't use that process again entirely. We just need to move or automate or re-engineer the whole process. Probably you want to start by customers providing their bank statement account first to check their eligibility. So you would re-engineer the whole process, right? So you are going to build the optimum process from scratch, right? So we are starting on a clean state, we are starting again, and re-engineering can increase efficiency like 10 times, right? So you can have a 10 times efficiency. It's a more radical change and more risky, right? At the end of the day, because you are taking a bet on a process that has not been proven before. Remember, if we are doing business improvement, it's a proven process, right? Is a proven process because that's what we currently have. We look at the process, we'll just tweak it and all, right? We know that it can work. But re-engineering, you are drafting a whole new process entirely, a whole new workflow, or a whole new way of working, right? It's a radical change and it's much more risky because it's not a tested process. But based on how you flowed it out end to end, you've done your process design, swim lanes, right? You can ideally envision how it's going to flow and optimize it for the best efficiency that you can, right? So you are not limited by the footprint of what currently exists. You can go all out and design a fresh new system with all improvements, right, in it. And that is the difference between process improvement and process re-engineering. So mapping that your current state and your mapping out your designing it will help you whether we can use this for by tweaking it, that's process improvement, or we just have to junk that current state and create a whole new process, right, for to be state, which is process re-engineering. You re-engineer the whole process, right? Now, I wouldn't go into these business improvement tools, Lean, Six Sigma, and all. So you can research online by yourself on what is Lean, what is Six Sigma, what is Lean Six Sigma, right? But in short form, Lean means you want to reduce waste. You want to eliminate waste. Anything that is a waste that is value to the process, I'm taking it off. So I'm going as lean as possible. Slim, you cut down the fat process as lean as possible, right? While Six Sigma is a set of tools to remove the cause of defect. So any step in the process that will cause defect, right, we would remove it. Anything that causes defect, meaning that in our plantain frying process, right? If we notice that if we increase the gas burner to say, let's say level 5, it always cause burn in one or two of the plantain, right? We will try to eliminate that cause of defect, probably by setting the burner to 4 or 3, and we'll make that the standardized process going forward, right? Now, people will now combine it into Lean Six Sigma. meaning that we would eliminate any form of waste, right, in the process, and also ensure that any defect is removed. So we are removing waste and defect. And that is what most business analysts look for. Waste, anything that is a waste in the process or anything that causes defect at the end of the day, we'll try to solve for that, right? And that's Lean Six Sigma. We've gone over this process redesigning, right? Radical change to improve the process. You can, probably I'm going to share the slide again, or you can research online, no need of slide. I need us to research as business analysts, right? Try to get the difference between business improvement and business process redesign, right? There are a lot of things out there, right? Business process redesign is like radical. Business process improvement is much more of incremental small step. You keep doing existing process. So this part of the table, for those, I know some of us might be doing screenshots. So some of this part is this, right? In the way they've mixed the table. This part is pointing to this one. So radical change, extreme is business process improvement. Incremental small steps like tweaking things, existing process, continuous, right, is your what? Business improvement. While business process re-engineering is radical, extreme. You start from new. It's a one-time, top-down. You have to go for it all out, right? A redesign of the entire process. So that speaks to the difference between that. I think I've been able to do justice to what business improvement is and process redesign is. So like I explained earlier, the overall, if you want to do a process redesign, right, or even improvement, the overall flow is this, right? Remember, I mentioned step is in everything. So even our process is in everything, right? So even in redesigning your business process, there's a step to it. So like I mentioned earlier, someone will have to document the assist or design the assist, how it currently is today. You are going to design it to be where we want to be in the future, how we want to operate in the future. Then you analyze the gap between the assist and to be, right? Once you analyze the gap, what do you do next? Solve for that gap, solution for that gap, right? That gap is the actual problem that you need to solve for to get to be. So that's where transition comes into place. You solve for that gap to transition from the assist state to the to be state. So the way to do your business process re-engineering or not re-engineering, redesigning, which can be improvement or re-engineering. Your business process redesigning has to go through your assist state, your to-be state, you do your gap analysis and you transform. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be process. Remember, we've drawn swim lanes, flow charts, right? Some deals with data, especially business intelligence analysts, right? Or some business analysts in some organization, you have to do with data. So you measure the data and the metrics that you have currently assist. You measure or you propose the future state metrics that you want based on those data. You analyze what is causing the issue between our current metrics, what we can achieve now, and where we want to be. Then you solve for it. That's transitioning, right? So that gap analysis can be done in terms of knowing what, so the things that you can use to cover up gaps or the things that often cause gaps would be seen within people, process, organization, system. So either your technology is having issue, which is the system. If you can update the technology, make it better, then it makes sense. It can be the people. Maybe they are not highly trained, they are not skilled, they need retraining. You have to go for upskilling, right? Training programs, right? You can use it to fix that gap. Sometimes it's the process. You have to draft a whole new process, or you have to tweak the process, right? Either process improvement or process redesigning, right? Or sometimes it's the organization, the structure of things is really not allowing things to work. There's too much bureaucracy. So you have to retweak the overall organizational structure to make that future state. So for example, customer and admin and manually approving. Once we go into our automated system, you won't have to. So you have to restructure the role of the admin, what they do, right? in that particular instance. So for you to move from your assist state to the to-be state, get the gaps within your process, your organization, your system or technology or the people, and solve for those gaps. Once you can solve for all the gaps along that edges, right, you can easily cover your gap, right? Now, in the next class, we'll be looking at testing the new way of working. Remember, we've gone from gathering the requirements. Your requirements include eliciting requirements, how they currently operate, what they would desire to have in the future. You've been able to analyze it, draft out those requirements. For you to now properly solution for it, you have to go through process design, your current state, your assist state, and your to-be state. Then you do your gap analysis. Then you transition, that is, solve for those gaps alongside along the edges of your people, the gaps that occur in the people, the gaps that occur in the system or technology, the gaps that occur in the processes, the gap that occur in the organization. Some organization would even have to rethink their vision, mission, and values. You would notice some organization, they change their vision, mission, and values. Those are the things. Probably they just need to realign the entire thing to be able to maintain competitive edge in the market, right? So they will retweak their entire organizational structure or their direction or their goal, right? So you can do things along this way to transition, right? Creating a solution now actually means you create that solution. All of those are much more technical, and those can be looked at in SDLC, how to now implement the solution. So you can research SDLC. I think someone is using my tool. Sekinat, can you? Okay. So there's a new process, a whole process around implementing or solutioning, right? And I'll typically recommend SDLC. So you can look at that. That's software development lifecycle or systems development lifecycle. So it's not only software. You can use it to develop any system, right? So system development lifecycle, look at that. Soft SDLC. You can look at that to look at how to create solutions, solutioning, the role of a BA in all of that. But those things would require a much more elongated session, right? Like a boot camp. So if you can find your way into a boot camp, if you can find your way into a one-on-one training and mentorship, go for that to further solidify your knowledge in business analysis. And I would always recommend that you explore Brightflare, right? So that you can get use of those opportunities. Go on the website, you can find how to source for tutors or engage, enroll in boot camps to be able to solidify yourself. So in fact, that is the much more sweet part. How to solution, right? How do they come up with all of this application? How do they come up with all of these solutions? The tools that we use in our businesses, right? The banking application you use, the ATM machine you use, all of those things, they are all outputs of solutioning, which typically goes through LSDLC most of the time, right? So you can research on that. But in our next class, we are going to be looking at testing new ways of working, meaning that we've done our transition, we've moved from the assist, or we've like created the to-be process and to-be state. Now we want to test. Remember, we've not used that particular new way of working before, right? So before we put it out there for people to start using, or our staff to start using, or customer to start using, we have to test it, whether it's working or not, and be sure that the solution we are putting out there is efficient and is effective, right? And that is the reason why we need to test this new way of working that we've derived. We need to test our to-be state, right? Our desired state, our future state, we have to test it. And that is what we'll be looking at next class, right? So any question before we call it a day? Any question? We're good, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. We've been able to gain one or two. Pardon that I'm like going for it back to back, rushing. The time allotted, right, is really short and for obvious reasons, right? But always remember that you can't cover the entirety of a profession in just those short class. What we are trying to solidify your understanding of what business analysis is, even for those of us that want to make the whether to go for business analysis or not, we can get a glimpse, insight to all what they do, and you can use that to. For those of us that have started on that career path, we can also broaden our knowledge or refreshing that we have, right? Those knowledge that we have initially concerning business analysis using short sessions we've created right from right. So let's have a lovely day. I hope we've been able to gain one or two. I'm sure we picked one or two. So let's have a lovely and productive day, right? Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.